Ready? If I lean forward, can you see me?
Sorry, do it again?
If I lean forward, can you see me?
No, I cannot.
Okay. All right. All right, Kenny, go ahead and I guess tell me how. Well, let's start off with American Creek. I guess I think your first trip was in 2006.
That's right.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your first trip on American Creek.
All right, so our first trip to American Creek, I landed a little bit behind some of the rest of the group. We got there maybe an hour later. And when we landed, the wind was blowing about 50 miles an hour across the lake. And as we were landing, I looked out and saw the rest of the group running through a field chasing ptarmigan. And people were fishing, and there was whitewater, and we were landing sideways. And so I knew from the beginning it was going to be a great trip.
Great. What were some of your favorite parts of the trip?
My favorite part of the trip, I guess I would say, I think other people have said this, but at night when you've been cold all day and you've been rowing and catching fish after fish and hiking, and the best part has to be just crawling into a nice warm sleeping bag and chatting with the rest of the guys about how amazing your day was.
Great. So, I mean, you mentioned sleeping bags. What was the weather like there? Was it like really, really cold, or?
The weather kind of varied. It would in the middle of the day it was pretty warm. You could take your raincoat off and get some sun, and it was really nice. But if the wind kicked up and there was a mist or a heavy rain, then it got chilly pretty quick.
Now, for you, what were some of the biggest challenges of that expedition?
The biggest challenges I would say would be the river splitting off. So you would come up to like a kind of like a fork in the river, and you would have to choose which way to go. And
Can we stop for just a second? There's a microphone right here.
is the way I'm answering okay?
Braids.
Good. Braids,
Braided, yeah.
not a fork.
Yeah, well.
Braids in the
Braids,
river.
Okay, sorry. Pick back up. Yeah, it sounds like you're doing right, because you're supposed to like restate the question a little bit, or like, isn't that what you were saying?
Yes, that's right.
Like, yeah, sounds like you got that.
It just feels really awkward. It's all right.
I know.
You're doing
Yeah.
well.
Alright.
You do seem pretty awkward, but
I can't help it.
You look good. You look fine. What were some of the biggest challenges? I guess we're going to run through that again.
Okay, so some of the biggest challenges I would say would be the braids in the river. You would come up to a spot, and sometimes you'd be moving pretty rapidly, and you would have to decide which way to go. So we'd generally try and get stopped and send out a few people each direction to determine which part of the river had the most water, and also possibly less trees hanging over it or less bears. Not always less bears. Sometimes we liked to be around a lot of them. But I'd say that presented the biggest challenge, just trying to make the right decision so you didn't waste daylight going down a river and trying to backtrack.
Can you tell me a little bit about the geography of that area?
I'd say it's beautiful, really dense. Should I start over with the?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'd say the geography of the area was beautiful. It was really dense forest all around the river, and then of course beautiful crystal clear water full of trout, and lots of berries, lots of wildlife other than bears, and just always around every corner. You never knew what was going to be there, but just beautiful in all aspects.
So did you get chased by any bears?
Yep, I did. Well, actually, on American Creek, I didn't get chased, though. But yeah, so no, we didn't. We didn't get chased. I never got chased by any bears on American Creek. We did. We would have to stay up most nights, though. We would take turns staying up, so we always had usually in twos, someone kind of looking out, making sure no bear got into camp and got disoriented and did any damage. So that was always a lot of fun. You could kind of reminisce on the day and we'd count bears through the night, and each group would kind of see who could count more bears that night. And so it was good. It was really neat to see the area in a different light. So
Great.
no
So
pun
what-
intended. All right, second.
No, okay. So what were the bears eating most of the time there?
Usually fish. They were generally when we passed them on the river, they would be fishing. So lots of fish, and I assume they're eating berries also in the forest.
Now, in Genesis 1,
Mhm.
God describes His creation as good and very good. How did that compare with what you saw along American Creek?
Okay, can I ask him a question real quick?
Yeah.
What is? I mean, I kind of understand that question, but what is? So
Well,
you're just talking about
just like
his.
creation, there's no just the amount of creation that's there.
Mhm.
There's so much flora and fauna, plants and animals
Mhm.
everywhere. Their sin, the penalty for sin was death, and
Mhm.
that's kind of when death came in. So there's some of that, with the bloodshed of killing the salmon. There's
Oh,
some
okay.
of that, but for the most part, it's just the bears didn't bother us.
Mhm.
They're,
Mhm.
they're these man-eating animals that left us alone,
Right. Right.
and just the abundance of creation and productivity that
Mhm.
was there.
Maybe another way to ask that would be, do you think that area there would kind of be what maybe Eden was like?
Yeah, I was gonna say because
Yeah.
it's more like
Before the fall.
it's
Yeah,
more
maybe
like
that's all.
how I would have assumed it was before the fall.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe
yeah.
go
Okay.
ahead and maybe just say something to that effect. Just say,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I really want to kill that fly too.
So
Yeah.
fly now. Oh, yeah.
Just won't leave.
Okay. Will you ask it?
Do you want to
me?
ask me?
Yeah.
Ask it. Okay. How do you think that American Creek, the area of American Creek that you saw, do you think that was that maybe reminds you of what it might have been like in the Garden of Eden before the fall?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that American Creek reminded me a lot of what Earth would have been like before the fall in the Garden of Eden. It was just radiant, plush forest with everything kind of coinciding naturally together. We were there interacting with the bears somewhat, and they were kind of doing their thing, eating and fishing, and we were there fishing and eating and exploring, and everything's really peaceful, and at the same time it's very intense. I don't know where I was going with that.
Was it kind of like a peaceful coexistence?
Yeah,
amongst,
peaceful
like,
coexistence.
Humans and nature
Mhm.
and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of peaceful coexistence.
Well, but you're in charge.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but,
Mhm.
but you don't have to exercise that authority.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mhm.
We might explore that theme a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Especially
We'll go
regarding
back to that.
Overrupta and everything. But okay, amongst American Creek. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about? And you don't have to remember exactly what happened and everything, but maybe give me a little bit of a chronological retelling of the trip you had along American Creek. Or do you think we should do that maybe for the Nova Rupta trip in the Valley of the Smoke? Do you think that's
Yeah.
more important?
Yeah,
That
probably.
fly keeps landing on me.
I don't know.
That's crazy.
It landed on John's mic earlier.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to do so much the chronological of the American Creek.
Okay.
But yeah, probably the main one would be our 2011 trip. Talk
Okay.
about that a little bit more, but
So we flew out
Nova
of Cat
Rupta,
Mine.
talk about some of the
Yeah.
most interesting things about that. Some of the contrast kind
Mhm.
of thing, like you did with the others, contrasting the Eden with this desolation,
Mhm.
creation with flood, fall.
Well, during that American Creek trip, did you see any, or did you already know about Nova Rupta in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes?
I believe I had heard David mention it at one time, but it didn't really occur to me at the time what
I'm sorry.
oh, yeah. I didn't reply it. Okay. Okay. During during the American Creek trip, I believe I'd heard Dr. Shorman mention Nova Rupta before as a possible future trip, but at the time it didn't occur to me what a drastic change it would be, how much of a different trip it would be, and so that was the extent of my knowledge.
So, when you first heard of Nova Rupta in the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, what were you expecting?
You know, I was expecting Nova Rupta to be a whole lot more similar to the American Creek trip than it was. I didn't realize there could be such a drastic change in landscape. I figured we would be more landlocked, but we would be in forest, and that there was just going to be this big mountain that had been a volcano, and it didn't occur to me that we were actually going to see such devastation.
So when you got there in 2009, your first trip to Nova Rupta and all that, what was your first impression?
My first impression, I guess, was just amazement at the amount of devastation that had occurred in such a short amount of time. It was really pretty wild to stand at the overlook and have plush forest all around, and then to take one step and to be standing in the middle of the desert. Basically, it was almost like he had been transported to just a completely different location.
Let's see here. Look up something real quick. Okay. Did you know about the Robert Griggs book that he had written before? Did you kind of know about that? Had you read it before you had visited?
Yeah, I did know about Robert Griggs. Dr. Shorman had told me a lot of the story, and I had read through the book some, and that was actually what was the main reason one of the main reasons I wanted to go on the trip, was to just kind of retrace what he had done. I thought that was really cool how he had done that, and I think I'd say that was the main reason that I wanted to go, is to try and accomplish the same things he had.
Great. So Robert Griggs' team faced extreme weather, on their trip and everything. Did you experience some of that extreme weather? And also tell me a little bit about the pumice storms that you experienced.
Sure. Yeah, we did experience extreme weather, mainly having to do with the pumice storms. We lots of high wind and lots of big chunks of pumice flying everywhere. And there's nothing like walking through the middle of the desert basically with a 50-pound backpack and pumice flying in your face for an hour and a half. That was pretty fun.
How would you could you compare it to anything else? I mean, like some people don't really know what it is to experience a pumice storm. So could you maybe compare it to draw a comparison?
I don't really know how to explain it.
If somebody's been in a hailstorm, maybe.
Yeah.
Just very, really, really sharp hail.
Okay. So how should I start off?
Yeah. How could you could you describe a pumice storm?
Maybe say it's really difficult to describe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a pumice storm is kind of difficult to describe unless you've been in it. But basically, it's kind of horizontally flying hail, but that are just small chunks of frozen. What is it? Lava? Frozen lava?
Magma. Yeah.
But dried magma. Oh no, I'll start over. Should I start over?
That's okay. Maybe just yeah, I guess so. But
Okay, all right.
Just be on the safe side.
I'm telling y'all, I'm terrible. This is like my least favorite thing in the world to do.
You
All
are.
right.
I'm actually editing fix all socially awkward.
All right.
Not that you want.
So
You're
miserable.
doing
All right.
great.
You're gonna
Okay.
be like on screen for like 10 to 20 seconds. Or
Okay, great.
Yes, and just, I mean, if you gotta start over. It's no
Okay.
big deal. Yeah.
Okay.
Just and give yourself a minute to think even.
Mhm.
That's fine too. So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're telling it a whole lot better than I will. So.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, so a pumice storm is hard to explain if you've never necessarily been in the situation. It's a lot like a hailstorm, but with kind of really, really light but hard, sharp rocks flying horizontally at you. And it's kind of like getting peppered with sand, but a little more painful. And maybe a little more scary just because they're so big.
were there any other challenges in hiking Nova Rupta and 10,000 valleys? There's 10,000 Valley of 10,000.
I'd say the other difficulties hiking through the valley to Novarupta would be the, I guess just not knowing necessarily what the future held, like wanting to conserve energy, but at the same time wanting to cover a lot of ground. And then the ground itself was difficult to walk in, really deep sand. And I'd say those were probably the only two other factors that really were a problem.
Was there any maybe conflict during the trip? With nature or anything like that you felt like maybe that you kind of overcame or anything? Was there any other difficulties during that trip?
As far as being out in nature on that particular trip, it actually wasn't quite as stressful in some situations as American Creek had been, just because there wasn't as much wildlife, mainly bears. So you didn't really ever feel any immediate danger. I'd say maybe if you were to get lost and run out of food or something like that, or out late at night or something, that could possibly present some type of hazard. But other than that, not really.
Were there any other stories you can think of that you want to share about that experience?
Should I talk about the phone or no?
Yeah.
You could, or crossing the river.
Okay.
What was crossing the river like?
Oh, yeah,
we did
yeah.
that. And we got some good video of that.
Mhm.
The first time we crossed. Remember how we had to stick the stick in there to know how deep it was?
Oh, yeah.
Because we read that's what you're supposed to do, or
Mhm.
you might drop off into an abyss.
Oh, right. Okay. So just start by one cool story or
Yeah.
One
What
funny-
are some experiences or stories you want to share?
okay. One fun experience was crossing the initial river, or the first river that we crossed on the way through the valley. And I think we all assumed that the river wasn't going to be a temperature a whole lot different than American Creek, but in reality it was freezing. And so I think we were all kind of excited to hop in. And after we got in, though, we were really pressed to get out pretty quickly. So it was freezing and our feet went numb immediately. So that was kind of fun. That was a terrible story.
That's okay. Any other stories? Keep going.
Not really. I don't
What
like
about
telling
jumping
stories.
across? Remember how we jumped across on the way back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what do I say about it?
Well,
I
just, just that water rushing underneath you and stuff.
Yeah.
Just think about it. You can.
I know.
Just think for a
I'm
minute.
sorry. I can't really. I don't know how to describe them. I don't do it.
You're doing fine, kid.
Well, go ahead and tell us about all the emergency phone calls you had to make.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's go into that.
Okay. How should I start that? Let's see. I guess. Let's see. How should I start that, David? Like, because it wasn't like any type of dispute, but I could say that because it'd be funny to explain it as like I was
Maybe
like,
you
well,
used
let me
to-
hang on to the phone, in case something happens. But but I really was planning ahead to be able to call Ashley.
Yeah. And you maybe use the satellite phone a little, drain your battery a little bit more than
Yeah. Okay.
than Idaho 4 or something. You can blame
Uh-huh.
it on me.
Oh, right. How should I start off though? Just a funny
Just like
funny
as
story.
if you're starting a funny story or something.
Okay. So one great memory of the trip that meant a lot to me, but possibly seemed a little dangerous to the rest of the group, was initially when we first left the cabin to hike through the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. I volunteered to carry the satellite phone, and everybody originally thought that was a great idea since it would just be more weight in my backpack. But I had other plans for the phone. Actually, I had hoped to. I don't know. I can't tell these stories.
You're
I
doing
don't know.
fine. You're doing
All
fine.
right.
Yeah, and remember, you can stop.
All right.
And then keep going.
Yeah. It's
All right.
the editor's problem, so I don't think.
Okay. He's gonna hate me. All right. All right. So I'm just gonna start over a different way. All right. So on this particular trip, we only had one satellite phone, and it was basically our only means of communicating with anyone out of the valley. And so if anyone was to get hurt, or if we needed to be picked up early or anything like that, that was the only means we had to contact them. But I had at the time, and what I still think is was a more important reason to use the phone than that. I recently started dating Ashley, which is currently my wife of 2 years. And during that trip, I felt like I needed to call her a few times to check in and tell her hi and that I was thinking about her. And it turns out that I talked to her a little more than I had planned on. And by the end of the trip, we didn't have any more battery left in the satellite phone, which I think made a few people pretty nervous. But
So were you caught using that phone and people are like, what are you doing? Or
well, I don't think I ever got caught. I think kind of my conscience, though, kind of told me to tell somebody that, hey, just so you know, I made a quick phone call earlier, and we don't have a whole lot of battery left. So that's about it.
Okay, great. That's awesome. All right. So
You almost cost us it.
so as you were going I guess you had to pass through the national forest. Is that, I mean, to get to in other parts of the national forest, to get to Nova Rapta and the valley. I mean, just the devastation of all that. So how did the scenery change as you made that journey into Nova Rapta?
Yeah, the scenery changed as we arrived at the kind of at the edge of the Valley of 10,000 Smokes was drastically different. You went from what you kind of picture as a postcard type view of Alaska into, what somebody would consider just the desert. It was, you went from plush green forest full of birds and bears and all kinds of neat creatures to just stepping off into a foot of sand and, and pretty substantial winds and just a whole lot of nothing, basically.
All right, and then let's see here. So just figure out how to say this. All that devastation and everything that you saw around there, did that kind of maybe remind you a little bit, or maybe do you think that might have been what the world would have looked like after Noah's flood? Do you think I guess maybe did it remind you any of that, or did you I guess what am I gonna say
Just
here?
the destruction
Yeah,
there.
that makes sense. I can
Destruction
answer
and
that.
everything. I'm just trying to
Mm-hmm.
phrase it in a question that you can answer.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I would just say that, the flood, I think, was definitely in the back of my mind during the whole trip. I think initially just seeing what the power of what God created and what it could do in such a short amount of time just really opened my eyes about how everything that we read about in the Bible, just that kind of made sense, chronologically after the flood, what it was able to accomplish, or what, I don't know if that's right.
Did it speak to you any about God's power?
Sure, yeah, just God's power is I can't think of a place that's more evident than out there. Just the range of the creatures that are there to just how powerful the river is to just I'd have to think of how to say that.
How much material came out?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just flooded the valley
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with volcanic debris.
Right. Okay. So you want me to start that one over? Or is that
Yeah,
okay?
that's fine. Or just continue where you're at.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, so just the amount of material that was able to come out of the volcano is just incredible. That God created a place that something like that could happen, and just the way that kind of the earth responded to it, I think was pretty amazing.
All right. And what was for you? What were some of your favorite parts, or what was your favorite part of hiking in Nova Rapta?
I think my favorite part of hiking in Nova Rapta was just being in such an unusual area. A lot of people are able to visit Alaska and see it in one aspect, or only get to see one aspect of it. And now that I've been to Nova Rapta, I think that that's a huge. You get to see a whole nother side of what Alaska really is really like and can be like. And so I think it was just really neat to get to walk through such a beautiful place, but at the same time that it was such a disaster area. And so it was just really neat to get to explore that and to see how the earth was recovering from that.
What was your least favorite part of that entire experience?
I'd say my least favorite part would usually be walking back to camp from wherever we walked to that day. That you had already, so the adrenaline was kind of gone, you were hungry and tired and ready to get on the phone, and you had a long ways to walk still. So that'd be my least favorite.
Do you want to let the dog out, or?
Can you hear the dog?
I did hear that last one.
Sorry about that. And this trip to Novarupta and everything, was that when you got chased by the bear?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Did we already cover that? Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and ask that then. And then I guess maybe start thinking about how we're gonna try to weave in I guess ways you might have seen God's